We're going to take the North and never give it back.
So that's a good pick. You get the corner. I got to go bold, right? I got to go bold for this.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube, and also rate the show 5 stars everywhere that you get your podcast. What is going on, Bears fans? It feels like it's been forever because it has. It has been over a week so far since I've last posted. So thank you guys for being patient. I'm trying a new streaming service out there, so hopefully it's coming through pretty okay. But we'll just review this. We'll see how it ends up going. But today, we're going to be breaking down the positional tiers inside of the NFC North and talk about just where the Bears kind of fit overall in the NFC North now that the draft has been finished. So really kind of talking about just where are the Bears overall. And also we'll talk a little bit about the rumors with Yannick Ngakoue as well before we get into the actual positional tiers. So what we'll be doing is just a standard tier list going through quarterbacks, running backs, offensive line, everyone in the North, and just kind of break down where everyone is at. So let's get this show on the road and let's talk about Yannick Ngakoue, because there's been some news, some reports out there about Yannick Ngakoue potentially being a Chicago Bear. And he just recently posted out that he's ready to rush. He posted the exact same thing that he said before he became a Chicago Bear. And 6 days later, he was signed with the Bears. So it has a lot of us Bears fans going, is he actually going to be a Chicago Bear, or is this more just noise going out there? Now, Ryan Poles has talked about this on the Pat McAfee show, that he's not done yet, and he has to look at the cap situation. And we broke this down after the NFL draft, because I was talking about how the Chicago Bears, they do not have much cap space. Even though you go out there and it says 20-something million, we broke it down at the end of the draft review. So for those that haven't seen that, go there, go to the very end of the podcast, and then you'll be able to hear us break down how much cap space the Bears actually have. But it's not as much as you would expect. It's around that $8 million range is what I'm projecting it to be, just because of the rookie cap is a lot higher than expected. And Ryan Poles also said that too, that he's like, yeah, it's a little bit higher than what we were actually expecting. So overall, that's just something that we will have to just be monitoring a little bit. Also, one thing, I am just looking at my stream. I'm getting some issues with this, but it should be good. Okay, cool. So, like I said, new streaming tool. Just want to make sure everything's good. Also, I forgot to mention this. If you are a Dune 2 fan, go to our store. I'll have a link down in the description. Also, for those that are watching live, you can actually see a direct link to this. It is a Lasan Al-Khalib shirt that has it's not actually Caleb Williams, but just a AI generated version of Caleb Williams. It's pretty cool. If you are a Dune 2 fan, you can pick it up at our store and get it before maybe I'll have to take it down, but I think it's pretty cool as a Dune fan. So if you are a Dune 2 fan, make sure to check it out and make sure to get it. So Yannick Ngakoue might be a Chicago Bear, because also I could expect him coming in at a fairly low number. And we talked about this too, that the Bears could trim some of the fat off the salary cap by getting rid of like a Larry Borum and saving some $3 million off the cap. And there's a couple other players like a Travis Homer that they could cut if they want to kind of create a little bit of extra cushion. But overall, I would rather have a Calais Campbell. Calais Campbell, to me, is still the prize of this free agent group that's still left, because he can play on the interior, he can play on the outside edge as well. And as we break this down, the defensive line for the Bears is still not so great right now, and it's definitely something we need to pay attention to. So let's get into the actual positional tier makers so that we can see what should the Bears be doing with this tier list. So let's get this started, and let's talk about the quarterbacks. And let's go over to the quarterbacks. So obviously, there's 4 quarterbacks that are out there, and I think it's pretty easy to say who has the worst. Because if we look over at the Vikings, J.J. McCarthy is the one that's least proven. So I'm actually just going to cheat and just kind of throw the Vikings as the worst. So I'm throwing them as the worst. Pretty simple. And then the Bears better than them. Also, for those watching live, let me know your opinions. So this is hard because Caleb Williams. I think that Caleb Williams is going to be great. I think he's going to be going out and dominating. I hate saying this. And if anyone disagrees with me, let me know down in the comments. Ron, what's good? Saying Bears will still dominate. I know I have a good feeling about the Bears. But if we're doing a tier maker for this quarterback position, okay, I got to put Jordan Love. Jordan Love beat every single Chicago Bears record that's out there. Do I think Caleb Williams can beat that? Yes, but I do want to kind of go. I don't want to do too much projection. I'm going to go with this, and ultimately, I'm going to put Jared Goff ahead of Jordan Love, just because Jordan Love, just more longevity with Jared Goff. I think that this kind of makes sense. Jared Goff has been good. Jared Goff plays well, but I do think that at the end of the season, actually, I agree with Brad out there. Caleb could end the season at 1, but you got to go with him as 3. So I totally agree with that. I think ultimately Goff 1. So you got Lions at 1, Packers at 2, Bears at 3, Vikings at 4. I think that's safe, right? And I think ultimately it just depends on the very end of the season. That's what you're really going to be looking for. This could definitely change, but I think that this is conservative right now. So let's get into this running back group where I had to kind of remind myself who the running backs are in this section. So if we go over to the running backs, what we have, for the Bears, we have DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, and Roschon Johnson. That's pretty good. I like that. So I'm just going to throw the Bears up just so that we have it. So let's just compare them to the Packers. The Packers, Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd, and A.J. Dillon. I actually forgot that this is all these depth charts are from ourlads.com, which usually has the best depth charts or projected depth charts out there. No, not going to lie, I like who they have. I really liked Marshawn Lloyd coming out. Yet again, he is a rookie. With rookies, I'm going to try and not put up too much stock into them because they are all question marks. So you don't want to make it too high. You don't want to make it too low. And we're going to try and stay consistent with a lot of these. So Packers, I like it, but because of Marshawn Lloyd, A.J. Dillon had a down year. But then let's go over to the Lions. And the Lions, it's pretty obvious here. You got David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, and also Sion Vaki, the safety out of Utah that can play running back, but then Craig Reynolds. I think that right now I got the Lions at 1. I would put the Packers below the Bears, and then you have the Vikings running out with Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. I like Ty Chandler, and I also like Aaron Jones as well. But do I like Aaron Jones more than what the Packers have? I don't really know. I like Ty Chandler, but Aaron Jones, the Packers moved on from Aaron Jones for Josh Jacobs. So I think ultimately I'm going to keep it this way. And Brad Baxter, you and I, we agree. I agree. It's Lions. Lions still have the best running backs. And then I will give it to the Bears over the Packers. Josh Jacobs, I'm not a huge fan of. I like DeAndre. And also, I'm not like in love with DeAndre Swift, but I think that Khalil Herbert is incredibly underrated. His efficiency is incredible. And you have Roschon Johnson. I think that they have the better depth. I like it. But I do think this tail end of the backs back here, I'd say are a little bit closer. But I do like I like the Bears running backs. I like the depth, and I think that is just a very solid unit. So I'm sticking with that. I'm going with that. That's what we're going with. But yet again, anyone disagrees, let me know down in the comments. So now let's go over to offensive line. So offensive line, I'm pretty sure that this is an easy who should be number 1. We'll still go through everything, but I'm pretty sure we all know that the Lions are going to be number 1. The Lions offensive line is incredible because you look at it, left tackle Taylor Decker, Graham Glasgow as the left guard, which is solid. Frank Ragnow at center, who's one of the best. Kevin Zeitler, even though that their guards really kind of they had some shuffling around with the guards. Kevin Zeitler is old, but he's phenomenal. And Penei Sewell is one of the best, if not the best, right tackle in the league. This is a phenomenal offensive line, just a great offensive line. And then we go over to the Packers, and the Packers have a lot of question marks because you got Jordan Morgan and Andre Dillard as your left tackles, basically. And Jordan Morgan, like we said, rookie coming in. I like Jordan Morgan coming out, but there's still question marks based on his arm length. And so not a huge fan. Elton Jenkins at left guard gets injured a lot of times. They have Zach Tom playing center, where I was like, Zach Tom at right tackle, I didn't mind too much. And then they have, then Josh Myers. I think that's a little bit interesting. I wouldn't think of that lineup being set up that way, but this is one of the better ones. I always think of more of a Shane Ryan at that right guard position and Zach Tom being the right tackle. I actually don't know why they have that. I'm going to put Zach Tom at right tackle because that's where he should be. And then also another person that they do have is Rasheed Walker, the tackle out of Penn State, who was pretty solid for them last season. Josh Myers has been not a great center. I just am pulling up his PFF grades. 28th center last year, 26th the year before, 33rd the year before that. And then, the guard position is also a gigantic question mark for them. Elton Jenkins has been solid, but has been just banged up. I'm not in love with the Packers' offensive line. I know some people are. I am not a big fan of it. It's a very okay offensive line. But then let's go to the Vikings. You have Brian O'Neill at right tackle. You have Christian Darrisaw at left tackle. Two incredible tackles on the outsides. And then you have the interior, which the interior to me is then where this offensive line kind of starts to fall apart, because you have Bradbury, who's just an up and down center, but I'd say that he's more of a below average center. I don't think he's terrible. And then you have Ed Ingram at the right guard position, who's been a below average guard, I would say. And right now their starting left guard is Blake Brandel. How many people have heard of Blake Brandel? I'll pull up his PFF grade, 55.1 PFF grade. Not a lot of snaps underneath him. It's that interior that's so weak. And the Vikings are weird because they have two of the best tackles on the outside, but then that interior is just soft, is just weak. But then last but not least, let's go over to our Chicago Bears, where Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Ryan Bates, Nate Davis, and Darnell Wright. I like the Bears offensive line. And I know a lot of people, we love to hate our offensive line, but I like Braxton Jones. I like Darnell Wright. I like Tevin Jenkins. I like Ryan Bates. I think that Nate Davis is better than the crap that he put out on tape last year, because typically he's been a good player in the NFL. Last year had a tragedy, like we've talked about. He's had a tragedy. He had a lot of things going on, and he did not look good. I expect him to come back. I expect him to bounce back, and I expect him to look solid. So let's flip over to the actual rankings, and I think that this is a little bit challenging. I'm just going to throw these out there. Lions, for sure, number one, no question. Then I like the Bears. I think with the Vikings, they have two phenomenal tackles, but that interior is really bad. Is really, 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 really bad. And the Bears, you talk about Tevin Jenkins, and we'll assume health because Elton Jenkins and Tevin Jenkins are solid. And if we're just kind of comparing the two, let's just kind of pin up the two spots. I think Braxton Jones is a better left tackle than what the Packers will be throwing out there. And then if we look at Tevin Jenkins, Elton Jenkins didn't look great last season. Tevin Jenkins, when healthy, yet again, when Elton Jenkins is healthy, I think Tevin Jenkins has played better. And that might sound like a bold take. Center position, Ryan Bates, we haven't seen much at center, but we know what Josh Myers is for the Packers, and that's not too great. And then you go into the right guard position, and it's kind of up in the air. And then right tackle, I don't know. You know what? Just because I'm I like the Bears offensive line. I do. I don't know. You know what? This is the Bears show. And Rob, you convinced me. Put the Bears second. Let's go. Let's bear down. I like the Bears offensive line. I really do. And I think that we discount it because of the number of sacks that were given up. And I do think that Nate Davis, like I said, I don't expect a lot of progression. I'm not going to try and factor in too much progression. But Nate Davis was really bad last year, and he's been a good, competent starter in the NFL. That, to me, is something that is good, right? But the 2, 3, and 4, it's very up in the air. Broski, what's going on, my friend? I'm doing well. I didn't tell all of you, I took the week off, obviously, as you saw, as there was no show. We went down to Disney World with the kids. We just impromptu, just kind of thing that we're like, let's just do it because I started a new job this week. So it's been a whirlwind, to say the least. And we all came back and we're all sick. So everyone's been sick. It's been a little bit crazy, but yeah. So overall, the Lions, this is the reason why the Lions have been in first place. They have the best quarterback, best running back, best offensive line, but wide receivers. I think we know who the number one wide receivers are. We don't even have to go through the wide receivers. Bears, number one wide receivers. And just because it's fun to look at this. And like what DJ Moore said on the Kay Adams show, it's going to be a race for whoever comes away with 1,000 yards first. Wide receivers, when you got Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore. And we're just talking wide receivers. We'll talk about tight ends later. It's easily the Chicago Bears. Because the Packers, to me, have solid wide receivers, like Christian Watson, removing injuries, right? He is a big play threat. And then you got Romeo Doubs, who I loved coming out of college. I think that he's a very solid player. And then you got Jaden Reed, good player, and Dontavian Wicks, who, surprisingly to me, is good. Like, you got these solid players that are all out there. Bo Melton, I liked, and someone that they just kind of picked up. I like their depth and just solid wide receiving core. But then if we go over to the Vikings, you got Justin Jefferson, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, Jordan Addison, very good player, and Brandon Powell. That's where it falls off for me. If they had a solid player, then yes, but I think overall that just with Brandon Powell, that's where the Vikings, you have the star power, but you don't have the depth as some of the others. They also have N'Keal Harry, right? So if we want to throw N'Keal Harry out there, we know how that is as the backup wide receiver. Then also the Lions. Let's talk about the Lions. Jameson Williams, Khalif Raymond, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that, like, obviously he's one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. So to me, I think that this is similar to what we talked about with the last group. I think overall, it's the Bears at number one. And this is not official right now, but Bears 100% number one. Then I think it's the Vikings. I think that the Vikings, you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. You got two powerhouses at wide receiver. Who cares about the wide receiver 3 when you got those two people right there? So to me, Vikings are number 2. And then I think you can flip a coin about the Packers and the Lions, but I think ultimately it's the Lions. I think that the Packers have better depth, but because of Amon-Ra St. Brown is an actual number 1 wide receiver. Packers just simply don't have that. But I think that it's a good wide receiver core. It's just Packers are last. But I think overall, I think that Amon-Ra at least raises it up. Now, when you look at the depth that they do have with Khalif Raymond and Jameson Williams, I don't love those guys. I say they're a tier down than what the Packers have. They're both like wide receiver 3s or 4s, arguably, but I think that ultimately Amon-Ra brings it up and lifts it up. So let's see what y'all are saying. Rob saying congrats on the job. Thank you so much. I'm pumped. It's been crazy. I've been drinking from a fire hose just with the new job. So it's been a lot of fun though. Broski saying I only expect Keenan Allen to play in 6 games. Yeah, he is injury prone. I'll give you that. But the Chargers, it's something with the Chargers. They always have injuries. Everyone's always banged up out there. But Brad's saying Bears, Gap, Lions, Vikings, and then Packers. So, yeah, we'll keep Packers over at the very end. But then, yeah, that Borski saying Lions wide receivers, trash besides St. Brown. Laporta is a good tight end. So we will be going through tight ends. So that's the other piece of this. So let's go through this and let's talk about the tight ends. Because tight ends, initial thoughts make me want to put the Bears at number 1. But let's talk about this because we have to factor in the better tight ends. Cole Kmet is not better than Hawkinson. Kmet is not better than Laporta even. Laporta just kind of burst up onto the scene. So let's actually talk about some of the depth and look at this. So the Packers, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, and Tyler Davis. So Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave as their tight ends. And so this is a case that I want to bring up as a part of where they might get better because tight ends typically take a year to be good. And the Packers, now this is their year. This is the next year that they have to essentially be better. But unless you're Sam Laporta, where Sam Laporta just decided to just kind of burst onto the scene and just absolutely dominate. And that he was outrageous just for what he did. That was just absolutely nuts for him to be just simply that good at the tight end position. He's the PFF's 6th highest graded tight end last season. He was incredible. He was remarkable. But then the Vikings, if we flip, and then their backup, Brock Wright, who to me is not great. He's just a backup, like nothing to write home about. But then you go to the Vikings, and they got TJ Hawkinson and Josh Oliver. Josh Oliver, mind you, everybody picks him up, right? Everybody would always pick up Josh Oliver, and he was the big, he can receive, he can block, very good tight end. And then also you also got Johnny Munt. Johnny Munt has come in and played solidly for them as well. I really like their backups. I really like the depth. I like who they have. I think that low-key, their tight end room is incredible, is very good. And then you have the Bears. We got Cole Kmet and we got Gerald Everett. And Gerald Everett, don't sleep on him. Solid tight end. The PFF's 26th highest graded tight end last season. And then Cole Kmet, PFF's 11th highest graded tight end last season. But let's see. What I'll say about this, with the tight end position, I am very impressed with the Vikings because I think that when you look at who they have, first off, Packers are last. I think that the Packers are by far the last. I think that they are the last out there. Also, oh, cool. I can change ads. I'm going to skip this ad for all of you. So make sure to like and subscribe. I just skipped an ad that was going to come up for all y'all. So let's talk about this though. So I'm going to say, I think that the Vikings have a better tight end group than the Bears. I think that the Packers are the worst. I think that Hawkinson is very good. I think that Oliver just makes that even better. They got Johnny Munt. I think that when you talk about the room of the tight end position, I think it's better. Now it's a question of Sam Laporta versus, I'd say, the Bears tight end depth. And I think I want to put the Bears at 2. But Laporta is a better tight end than Kmet. Because Kmet to me is just that classic, like, top 10 tight end. I think Laporta, though, like we've seen, tight ends take another step next year. And I think that this is going to be what I ultimately do. Even though that I really like the Bears tight end group, I think that the 1, 2, and 3 are really good. Packers last. But what we'll see is I'm going to go with this. Vikings number 1. I like the depth. I like Hawkinson at the top. I'm going Laporta at 2, even though I like the Bears depth though. That's the only thing. I'll think about this. But Bears Bones saying Vikings, Bears, Lions. I might be convinced, right? Just because for the Bears. But I think that the Lions and the Bears are something that can go back and forth. You know what, Bears Bones? I'm going with you. We're going Bears number 2. You talked me into this, but because the Lions just really don't. They don't have depth, and you see more and more teams going with 2 tight end sets. We're going to go with this. We're going with the Bears at tight end 2, and we're going with the Vikings number 1. They got Josh Oliver and Hawkinson. I think those are both better than Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet, but I think ultimately Bears number 2. And yeah, and Bears Bones, good point. Saying Waldron runs a lot of 2 tight end sets. Exactly. So the Bears better depth at tight end. But let's just talk about the offense real quick and to wrap this up. So for quarterbacks, we have, and then we'll cover the defense later. So at quarterback position, it's the Lions, Packers, Bears, Vikings. Running backs, we have Lions, Bears, Packers, Vikings. Offensive line, Lions, Bears, Packers, Vikings. There's a common trend here. And then you go to the wide receivers, Bears, Vikings, Lions, Packers. Then tight ends, Vikings, Bears, Lions, Packers. So when you look at this, you do kind of see Bears have a good offense. The big question is going to be at that quarterback position. But other than that, Bears position groups, I think, are pretty darn good for sure. So let's go over to the defense. Let's start talking about the defense, and we're going to start out with the cornerback position. Now let's talk about the corners, and obviously the Chicago Bears have some very good corners out here where we have Jalen Johnson, we have Tyreek Stevenson, who looked very good last year, and Kyler Gordon, who took another step. So good corners out there. But when we flip over to the Packers, you have Eric Stokes, who really kind of took a step back. The Packer fans were expecting him to look a little bit better. He had recorded a 51.5 PFF grade last season, and Keyshawn Nixon, their nickel corner, recorded a 60 PFF grade. Not good. And Jair Alexander kind of took a step back, but even though that he didn't look as great as he normally has, I still think that he's one of the better cornerbacks in the league. Even though that he kind of has taken some step backs with some injuries, still a solid upper tier corner, I'd say, overall. And then we go over to the Lions, and the Lions have been trying their darndest to get a starting lineup out there at the cornerback position, where they drafted Terrion Arnold out of Alabama, and then they also have Brian Branch, who plays a lot of that slot. They have a weird lineup where Brian Branch plays more of that slot cornerback position, even though that he's more so listed at safety sometimes. But we're going to say more of a slot, very, very, very good slot. And then Carlton Davis as their other outside cornerback. Pretty darn good. I really like what they're doing. Carlton Davis, good corner, solid corner. More just like a good corner that you want to have starting, nothing like insane, but a good corner at the outside position. And then you're talking about the rookie too. Pretty good, honestly, for the Detroit Lions. And then you go over to the Vikings. And for the Vikings, what we have, Josh Metellus, we have Caleb Evans, and Byron Murphy Jr. So I think we all know who will be last, and that will be the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings overall, the last ones for the cornerback position, I'd say. Bears, I really like. So I'm just going to kind of throw these out here right now, and this might even be just what I ultimately end up going with. I think that the cornerback position, we'll have to see what is up. Also, Dobbsy, what's good, my friend? What did you miss? Well, we did the offensive side so far, but yeah, if you disagree, let me know. John saying Caleb versus Love, Goff 2, Stout on the road, Jair 2-time All-Pro and best corner in the division. I think he's kind of taken a step back a little bit. He's good. He's very, very, very good. I think that the Bears do. I think that Vikings by far are the worst. I think that is something that we can all agree on. Vikings are the worst. But now, if we just look at what everyone has, I think that Jalen Johnson really proved himself last season. Now, cornerback play is volatile, so he's not going to be the next, stay as like the number one cornerback in the NFL, because what we've seen historically is that cornerbacks go up and down. Tyreek Stevenson, I think, is a solid corner, and Kyler Gordon is a good slot corner. Now, if we go over to the Packers, Keyshawn Nixon has not been good, and Eric Stokes was not good, and then Alexander is good. I like him. So I think, to me, I'm looking at this too, and the Lions, not going to lie, the Lions have some good corners out there. I think Carlton Davis is a solid corner. I think if you put I think that Brian Branch is a better slot corner than what we have. And then you look at Carlton Davis. I think that Carlton Davis is probably better than Tyreek Stevenson, just because more consistent, more solid. I think Stevenson could be better this year. And Terrion Arnold, then the Bears have more of that superstar power. I think that's tough. I think that the Packers have the third best corners in the division. I know, John, you're making the piece out there about. I know that you're making the case for Jair, but I just think that their depth, I just don't, or like just who they have. Keyshawn Nixon and Stokes just hasn't been that good. Yeah, I'm going to agree with Bears Bones here. I'm going to go Bears Lions. I think Bears and Lions are very close. I really like Terrion Arnold. I think Terrion Arnold has that like next level twitch. I think he might be a year or two and then he'll be good. But I'm going to go with this. I think that the Bears have some very good corners. I think their arrows are also pointing up with a lot of this. I won't do too much projection, but I think that when you look at who they are on paper, I'm going with this. I'm going with this. I think that it's good. So Bears, Lions, Packers, just because they have one good corner, and then the Vikings are just bad. The Vikings corners are just bad. Let's be real here. So safeties, this one is tough. This one, I said this last year. I'm a Bears fan. I'm a Bears safety fan. I like Jaquan Brisker, and you bring in Kevin Byard. I'm a Kevin Byard fan. I think the dude just gets his job done. I really like him out there. I know a lot of people love the Lions safeties, but I don't see it. Melifonwu, I think, is a solid. I think that he had a solid year last year, and I think Kirby Joseph is a solid safety, but I'm not necessarily in love with it. I think that it's a solid group out there. If I pull up the grades as well, just so that we can see that, Melifonwu, according to PFF really liked him. They had him as the 9th highest graded safety in the NFL with an 82.1 grade. Kirby Joseph with a 58.1 PFF grade. I think Joseph's good. I think that Melifonwu, obviously, like what you were talking about with the grades, solid. But let's flip over to the Green Bay Packers. Xavier McKinney they bring in, and then they just said, you know what? This is what Gutekunst does with the Packers. He just goes, I'm going to draft as many rookies as I can, and one of them is going to hit. And I hate that he does that, because I love that he does that. Like, it's a smart decision that he does that, because one of them will most likely hit. You got Javon Bullard out of Georgia, who I think is a solid player. Reminds me of Adrian Amos. Katano Oladapo out of Oregon State was someone that I put as a potential steal of the NFL, or like someone that could be a late round gem that people could end up finding. And Evan Williams. But overall, it's a bunch of rookies that are out there. And then you go over to the Vikings and you have Harrison Smith, who's very old, but he's still playing well, and Cameron Bynum, who had a good season last year. I'm going with Bears number one again. I think that Harrison Smith he's long in the tooth, but he can still play. But I think when you look at it, I think Jaquan, like when you look at the other people, I think that Xavier McKinney is a very good safety. Might be the best in the division. It probably is actually the best in the division. But you have a bunch of rookie question marks there with the Packers. And I think the Bears just overall have a more solid safety for sure. So to me, I like it. And also, I agree with John. I love Brisker. I think that Brisker is a very good safety. I don't know why Brisker gets hate. Like some Bears fans just kind of hate on him a little bit. I like him. But let's see what else. I think the Vikings are number 2 just because Bynum did have a good year last year. You have Harrison Smith. I think that they have the second best safety group. And when you look at the Packers versus the Lions, I'm going to put Lions at the bottom. Just because I think that when you talk about having McKinney for the Packers and a rookie, McKinney to me gives you that more upside with that safety position. So let's see. But what do you all think about this one? I think that this one felt a little bit easier. So yeah, Broski saying Lions safeties are bums. Yeah, I think looking at this, I do agree. I think that the Bears secondary, like we've said, the Bears secondary is really good. It also is coming up. I also really like Byard. I think that Byard is an upgrade over Eddie Jackson. Brisker has been a good safety. I think overall, Bears have the more consistent safety group, better safety group overall. Now do we have to talk about defensive line? Do we really have to do this? I should have switched it up. I should have switched it so that the defensive backs were at the end. I should have moved that down like I normally do. Defensive line, the Bears defensive line, obviously, not a lot of us are very high on it because we have Montez Sweat, Andrew Billings, Javon Dexter, and DeMarcus Walker. So Montez Sweat, obviously, high on. Billings, like kind of that solid puzzle piece, right? Then you have Javon Dexter, where it's projection, right? It's projecting that he would be good is what we'd be doing. And like I said, I don't want to do too much projection. Then you have DeMarcus Walker, and then ultimately, DeMarcus Walker's okay. And then as the backups, you have Austin Booker, Zach Pickens, Michael Dwarmafor, and Dominique Robinson, and potentially Yannick Ngakoue. But when you go to the Packers have a very, very, very good defensive line. They have Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Preston Smith, and their backups, Lucas Van Ness, TJ Slayton, Carl Brooks, and Kingsley Enagbare. And like Packers to me have a very, very, very good defensive line. Because you're talking about Gary coming off of the ACL, he wasn't the same Rashawn Gary now that we saw before the injury, but still was a very good pass rusher. Preston Smith has been solid. Van Ness was a solid player. Clark is still one of the better nose tackles, and Wyatt was a good 3 technique. Not as dominant as I was expecting him to be, but Brooks was okay as well. Now let's go over to the Lions. Aiden Hutchinson has shown himself as one of the better defensive linemen in the NFL. And then also Ali McNeil is a phenomenal defensive tackle. DJ Reader is a good defensive tackle. And then Marcus Davenport, who's just kind of been up and down. But better than the Bears. But their backups, Josh Pascal, Levi Arunzawike, and then John Kaminsky and Broderick Martin. So let's go over to the Vikings, though, where I was actually seriously surprised by this when I was looking at this, because I forgot they have Jonathan Bullard that they signed, which I was never super, super high on Jonathan Bullard. But then you also have, it was Jonathan Grenard on the outside. And then also they have, wait for it, they don't have it on this. Oh, no, because it's the outside linebackers. That's right. They don't have it as actual defensive ends. Let me just double check this real quick. That is weird that they threw that out there on the outside. The Vikings one is weird. I will pull up something different because they kind of have it as like the actual, they kind of have it a little shifted in this weird situation on the R lads. So I'll talk about it this way. They're actual edge rushers, Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel, that they ended up adding. Now, Grenard, that's the person I haven't been super high on. Had a pretty good year last year, right? Like double-digit sacks. Has been a good player and can do multiple things. Van Ginkel had an absolute crazy year last year, specifically from the pass rushing perspective. And then obviously they add in a Dallas Turner, a person who is projected to go top 10. They end up trading a decent amount to go up and get him. Then also at the defensive tackle spot, They have Harrison Phillips, who to me is just a solid run defender on the interior. Jonathan Bullard, who has been around forever, but disappointment for the Bears, but has played forever. And then Jerry Tillery, who had his first ever solid season, but besides that, has always kind of been banged up. And Jonah Williams. So to me, their defensive tackles are definitely weak up the middle, for sure, to say the least. Now, I think ultimately where this goes into is this, to me, goes into Packers are 1, Lions are 2 for defensive line. And then I think it's a battle for the Bears versus the Vikings. Because I think that the Vikings have a better edge rusher group. Because I think that on the outside, I think Sweat is the better edge player. But when you have Grenard, and then you have, like, when you factor in Grenard, you factor in Van Ginkel, who I think is a good situational pass rusher, plus a Dallas Turner, edge rushers, they got us. And then on the interior, I think that we got them on the interior. So let me know what the chat, I'm going to start reading some of the chat. Let me know what you think. Do you think that it should be the Bears or the Vikings? I could go either way with this one. Let's see what everyone's saying. Broski's saying Dexter and Pickens will take huge steps forward this season. Billings is a monster, and Sweat is a beast. Bears should sign Calais Campbell to pair with Walker. I agree. I think that Yannick is. I think a lot of people want Yannick to bring him back, but if they can get Calais Campbell, that fits so many other issues, and he's been a better player. And he's not coming off of an injury. Yes, he's older, but I like him more because I think that he can fit more needs for the Chicago Bears, depending on what you want. He can do it. So I agree with that. John saying if Bears start out like 5-3 and have a chance to contend for a playoff spot, they should make a trade for another D lineman to line up across from Sweat. Need 2 guys to get their hands on the quarterback. How cool would that be if they traded for someone? But this next year's draft will be loaded with defensive linemen. You already kind of see what's going out there. It's all the offensive players went this year, then all the defensive players are going next year. So next year's a good time to have some higher draft picks. Broski saying Reader old and coming off second torn quad. Good point. And then John saying I like Bud Dupree and Hendrickson, sign a veteran. Yeah, Bud Dupree's still available too. And then Broski saying Bears can possibly be best D line. He's got Packers, Bears, Lions, Vikings. And then Baxter saying I think your tier works, but Bears do have potential. You know what? This is the 3rd time this show. This is a Bears show. We're going to go and give the good old Bears bump here, right? So I think everyone that said something, we'll just give the Bears a little bump with this. So I do think that the Vikings have the better edge rushers. But at the interior spot, yeah, it's a little weak. I think that the Bears have the better all around. I think that they have less holes on the defensive line. Well, I think that the Vikings do truly have a hole on that interior because you have Harrison on the interior, but besides that, everyone else is weak. So we'll give it to the Bears for that. But I do like the Lions just because you got Hutchinson and Aleem McNeil. I think that that's some pretty big firepower. But I do like what y'all are saying with the Bears do have the potential, right? Javon is a beast. Javon has been developing, and we said this last year. Javon needs a year. Defensive tackles need a year in order to kind of take that next step. They don't do well. A lot of different positions don't do well the first year. So we'll give it to the Bears as the 3rd best defensive line. So let's get in to the linebackers. And then last but not least, we got to go through special teams. I actually have not even prepped for special teams. So we'll have to, y'all will have to help me a lot with this one. So linebackers, Bears number 1. We don't even have to look at this. Bears linebackers are crazy good because you're talking about TJ Edwards. You're talking about Tremaine Edmonds. And then your backups being Jack Sanborn and Noah Sewell. You can't get much better. I think that this is a phenomenal linebacker group. Then your backups of the backups, you got Amen and you got Micah Baskerville. So to me, linebackers, Bears got this easy. Then when you go over to the Packers, you got Edgerrin Cooper, who I was actually low on, which I love that the the Packers got him. I think he's fast. I think he gets to the ball real quick. But I do think that there is an issue with I don't like linebackers that when they make the tackle, when they hit the player, they go backwards. I don't like that because you're not showing some pop. You're not showing some strength. I think that he's a little bit weak. I think that the Bears running backs at the NFL level could probably run through him because I think he's too light. While the other lighter linebackers that you see coming out, like a Roquan Smith, they wrap up and they bring down the player. While Edgerrin Cooper, I just didn't see that. And now I know a lot of people are high on Edgerrin Cooper. But then they also have Quay Walker, and then backups Isaiah McDuffie and Ron Hopper. Overall, I mean, you got a rookie, and then you have Quay Walker, who is good for getting ejected at games. Has been a okay linebacker, but not great, to say the least. So then linebackers for the Lions. What you have here, Alex Anzalone, looks really cool. Probably had one of his better years last season. Has been okay. And then Derek Barnes, solid with like a Jack Campbell. I don't hate their linebackers. I think Jack Campbell will probably take a step up. I don't necessarily hate him. But yet again, this just further shows that the Bears are the number one linebacker group. And then you got the linebacker groups for the Vikings. They have them set up a little bit interesting. They have Blake Cashman, Ivan Pace Jr., Brian Asamoah. I liked, Ivan Pace was someone that really kind of popped onto the scene last season for the Vikings. And Blake Cashman is a solid coverage linebacker. And Asamoah, I liked him coming out, but hasn't been as good as he really kind of should be. But Cashman and Pace, I don't mind those linebackers overall. So to me right now, this is what I have. I have the Bears number one, right? Easy. We know that. And then after that, we have the Vikings, and then we have the Lions, and then we have the Packers. I don't know. Part of me, let's take another look at this, because I think that this is where you just kind of have some. I think Packers are the worst. Going through that, because the Packers have Quay Walker has not been that great. And then you have a rookie. Not a great linebacker with a rookie, you're last. And then you have the Lions. Like we said, I like Jack Campbell and Anzalone and Barnes. I think that's a solid linebacker group. Vikings, and then you have Vikings with Pace, Cashman. I'm going to go Vikings number two. That's what we're going to go with for the defense. But when you look at this, guys, I know that there was a couple things that we moved the Bears up a couple spots on, just because we are Bears fans here. But I feel good about this, because the Bears have not been last place in any of these things. The only ones that we were talking about, the only one that we were actually discussing and debating was the defensive line. Now, if they add someone, then potentially that would make them better, make them more upper echelon. Also, I do like that the Bears have an Austin Booker. I like that. But when you look at this is a good squad. This is a good team. And I think that's the biggest thing when you look at it across the board. The only number 3 spots were quarterback, where we know Caleb is the question mark. What can Caleb do? And we know that there's a question mark at defensive line. But you look at this, best corners, best safeties, best linebackers, that defensive line just has to get together. And it's then the question on Javon Dexter taking that step, Zach Pickens taking that next step. And then also, if we sign a Calais Campbell, like, how crazy would that be? How amazing would that be just to add that depth to this defensive line? Because then now this team is good, and all that Caleb Williams has to do is throw it to the number 1 wide receivers, the number 2 tight ends, the number 2 offensive line, the number 2 running backs. Yet again, we did say offensive line was kind of that debatable 2-3, and say a little bit with like the running backs too. But it's that good feeling. This is a solid team when you look at it according to the NFC North. And then also when we talk about just the overall competition, where the competition's at. What this is showing me right now, because if we just simply look at the defense, the Packers, it's that, like, they're not great. Like, the team itself is not phenomenal. Second best quarterback, third best running back, third best O-line, fourth best wide receivers, fourth best tight ends, third corners, third safeties, number one D-line, fourth linebackers. The team itself is beatable, but we have to beat them. That's the biggest piece. And then the only other pieces too, it's like when you look at the Lions, it's that O-line, the running game, and Jared Goff just knows how to throw it. And then the defense, solid D-line, solid corners. They really tried to upgrade that. Don't like their safeties. They were graded at the bottom. Linebackers could be on the come up with like a Jack Campbell as well. So, and then the Vikings, it's a question of just the quarterback, what can they do, right? If the quarterback can move the football and the offense can get going under McConnell, that is the ultimate question. The defense has been a solid defense because Brian Flores is like, you know what? Screw it. Our corners are terrible. Let's just blitz like absolute crazy and try to get people out there. So let's just finish this off with the special teams and polish this bad boy off. Bears number one with the crocodile punter. Are you kidding me? Bears Bones out there already saying that. Number one special teams. We got to give it to the Bears. But let's sincerely look at this. I'm genuinely curious about this because I scout special teams when we actually do the actual special teams review when we start going through the actual players. But Torrey Taylor for the Bears, Cairo Santos, and Patrick Scales. Santos has been, I think Santos has been one of the most underrated kickers in the NFL because no one puts him up there at the top, but he's just been really, really reliable. And then obviously Torrey Taylor, rookie punter, sensation from the land down under, which is Iowa. And then we have the Green Bay Packers with Daniel Whalen as their punter. And then you have Anders Carlson, who, but then when you look at we forgot to talk about the returners. We have Velus Jones as punt returner and kick returner with Dante Pettis. I don't like our returners. Then we have Tyler Scott as kind of the backup for the returners. That is actually a big question mark. Is the returners overall is what are we going to have out there? Because Velus, he can't be messing us up with this, man. Come on, Velus. But that's actually my biggest question. Is I do think that Velus is the thing that would drag down the special teams, if anything. Packers, Jaden Reed is their punt returner. Keyshawn Nixon has been a solid returner for them overall. And then you got the Lions. They got Khalif Raymond, one of the better punt returners. Khalil Dorsey. They have solid returners. And then Jack Fox, one of the better punters. The Michael Badgley, the Money Badger. They have a good special teams unit. Let's be real here. They have a very good special teams unit. And then the Vikings, Ty Chandler as their returner with Kenny Nwanu, who's one of the better kick returners out there. And then Ryan Wright, and then Will Reichard. I'm going to put Vikings at the end. So this is as much as we're talking. This is as much as we're going to talk about special teams this year. So we'll just fly through this last little bit. I'm putting the Bears at one just because I feel like it, because we got this guy for those watching, the crocodile punter. I got to put it at number one. But honestly, the Lions do have a very good special teams unit. That they could be number one. I just don't want to talk about this too much. And then I put the Packers at 3. I think they got a solid unit. I like their returners, but I think that the Packers and Vikings are down below at the worst, and Packers number 3. But you can flip those. You can flip 3 and 4, and you can flip 1 and 2 if you really want to. But this is our tier list. What do we think? How do we think this ended up? I think that this, like what we were talking about before, this is a good exercise. This is a good exercise, and I feel a lot better about the Bears as we go through this. It really does feel, it feels good, because when you look at it overall, spots that the Bears could be better, right? Like we talked about quarterback, obviously, at the number 3 spot. Running back, could that move up at all? I don't really think so, just because I don't think so, just because the Lions have such good running backs. Offensive line, I don't think that they could dethrone the Lions. I think that they could just solidify that number 2 spot, like with Braxton Jones taking a step up, Darnell Wright taking a step up, and then you have Nate Davis progressing back to that mean so that he plays solid like he did before. And then Ryan Bates, we don't know what he looks like at center, but if he's solid, then perfect. Then you got Amagaji as the backup just in case when Tevin Jenkins goes down, which I like. Bears' best wide receiver group. Tight end, I don't think that you could see them better just because I don't think Cole Kmet takes necessarily a jump. I think what you see is what you get with them. And then, like we said, defensive line is really it. But, first place special teams, first place linebackers, third place defensive line, first place safeties, first place corners, second place tight ends, first place wide receivers, second place offensive line, second place running backs, and third place quarterbacks. Let's go, Bears. I think this is solid. This was a lot of fun. Hope you liked it. Make sure to like and subscribe, though, if you're watching out there on YouTube. Also, tell your friends about the show, too. And last but not least, all the Dune fans out there, you can get your Lasan Caleb. I don't know how to pronounce it yet with like the Lasan Caleb. But, the savior of the Chicago Bears franchise t-shirts, link down below in the description. You can get it out there on the store. And I think it actually looks pretty cool. So if you're a Dune fan, make sure to pick one up. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we are out.
Yeah, she's got some nice